Hello everyone, AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink, and for today's video I am part of a blog hop for Waffle Flowers November 2019 release. I will have more info plus like links to all the new products, etc. That'll all be on my blog, which will be linked directly below the video. And of course, I'm using the large floral stamp set. Big surprise. This set is gorgeous. This is the Sunflower Love stamp set. And in my head, this took several kind of turns from what I originally planned. So I started off with some watercolor paper. This is B watercolor paper, and I had cut the sheet in half. So it's 4.5 by 6 inches. And there's two large floral images in this Sunflower Love set. There's one where it's just the flowers, and there's another one with like kind of a banner, which is really neat. So I started with just the like large floral image here, and I stamped onto the B watercolor paper with some clear embossing ink, and I stamped it twice because there's some texture to this paper, so to kind of, you know, get all that detail. And then I'm using Simon Says Stamps rose gold embossing powder. This is more of a copper look to it. And it has this like almost like a copper sparkle in it. It's not a sparkle embossing powder, but it does have that almost sparkle effect. It's really pretty. So I heat embossed that image. And then I also did the exact same thing with the other large image in this set. So there's also a few sentiments. There's a separate little leaf stamp and whatnot. But I stamped these with the intention of potentially doing 2 cards. So after they were both heat embossed, I am going to do some very easy watercoloring. I'm using my Prima, this is the Essence watercolor set. And I sprayed down the watercolor paper first with water. Just get it all wet because I'm going to do some, you know, easy outside the lines, messy watercoloring here. Because my plan was to just leave the flowers like as is. And then, you know, I'd die cut with a rectangle die and then stick it on a card and be done. But things just kind of took their own time and took their own, you know, ideas or whatever. So in the end, the messy watercoloring is almost not necessary, but at the same time, I kind of like that when the color goes outside the lines and then you die cut it and then it kind of removes that stark edge with the dies, if that makes sense. So plus, like I've said many times, once I got used to doing messy watercoloring like this, it's freeing. It really is. I've always been someone who's very like, you know, color within the lines. And purposely going outside the lines, it makes it so much easier. It kind of just removes that stress. And then I can just slap color on and not worry about it so much, or not, you know, try so hard and just enjoy the process more. So that's what I did with both images. Kind of started with that first layer, and then I just went back in with the same colors, just a little less water, a little more color, and then added that to these images. And that just really makes the images pop if you're going to leave them like this, but it also just gives it more, you know, that detail, more depth of color. So I kept this watercolor very simple. I'd only added that second layer to all the main images, added a little bit of brown to the flower centers. And then I decided to do a really quick background. So another piece of the same watercolor paper, sprayed it down with water first, and then just added those same colors to the background. Literally just splatting. That's about the easiest way to explain it. Just kind of splatting my watercolor brush on here. Since I'm using like a yellow and a green, I don't have to worry too much about them getting muddy. The tones of these, they probably could get very muddy, but I'm not going to go back and forth and really mix them. I just wanted color on the background. And this is going to soften as it dries. So I use my heat tool just to speed up the drying process. And then, you know, this fades back. If you want, you could add, you know, more layers and really like deepen the color. But I just wanted that nice light background in those same colors. Once it was dry, I die cut it with one of the Waffle Flower A2 wafer dies. And then I also die cut the florals with there's coordinating wafer die set. So I die cut both of those flower clusters, and that's because I decided I was going to use them both on the same card and just kind of like have that huge cluster of flowers kind of framing the sentiment. So once I kind of figured out what I was doing with all this, then it all started to come together a little bit better. So for the flower cluster that has the little banner, there's, like I said, there's little sentiments in the set that you can stamp. You can also, there's also coordinating dies for the sentiments as well, so you could stamp them separately and die cut them. That's actually what I was originally planning to do, but then since I have this all ready to go, I was like, why not just add the sentiment to this panel? So I use my anti-static powder tool, stamp sentiment with clear embossing ink, and I'm going to heat emboss it with that same embossing powder. So coat that with the rose gold embossing powder, tap off the excess, and then I will melt that with my heat tool. And then while I have my MISTI out again, I'm also going to stamp the inside of the card. So I've got my card base here, and it's just heavyweight white cardstock cut to 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4, top folding A2 card. And then I'm doing the solid cluster of flowers, the one without the sentiment label. And I'm stamping that with mustard seed distress oxide ink. And again, this is one of those things where it's like I stamp and it's like the detail in this stamp. I was like, oh, you don't even need to color it. You could just stamp it and it's gorgeous. Love. Anyway, that finished off the inside of the card. To finish off the outside of the card, I'm going to first adhere just that watercolor panel that I did. So I coated that with a fairly generous amount of craft tacky glue, because it is still, even after die cutting, it was still a bit warped because I'd added a ton of water to it. So adhered that first. And then the large floral cluster, I'm also going to adhere with the craft tacky glue and then press that into place. I don't mind the little bits like on the edges and whatnot, popping up, giving it a bit more dimension. As long as the base is adhered, it's good to go. And then the piece with the sentiment, I put foam tape all on the back of it just to give it that bit of dimension and pop it up from everything else. So peeled off the backing on the foam tape and then press that into place. And then as a final little bit of embellishment and to bring in a little more bling, I pulled out some Studio Katia crystals from my stash and just kind of sprinkled these throughout the background and around the flowers just to give it that little extra something, but not take away from all the flowers and the heat embossing and whatnot. So I just kind of sprinkled them here and there on the background, and using the clear ones kind of over the flowers here and there because they almost look like little, little water droplets. So once I've got those into place, I'm just going to adhere them with more craft tacky glue, just picking it up with my jewel picker. And then once these are adhered, this card is complete. So like I mentioned, this is part of a blog hop. I will have a link to that. When you check out my blog post, there'll be links to all the other participants, tons of inspiration, giveaways, all that stuff. So if you're interested in that, check out the link to my blog post below, as well as I'll have links to all the supplies used, etc. So thank you all so much for watching, subscribing, thumbs upping, commenting. I really appreciate it. I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.